Hello everyone. Hi, welcome to Academy of Astrology UK live stream broadcast. Oh, you get a cat behind you, Mandy.
Yeah,
Today with
Milton.
me is Mandy and Milton.
Milton's joining us this evening.
Okay, so today I think as we say it online, today we're going to talk about Mercury in Libra and Mars, Saturn, sesquiquadrate, because this is a kind of a minor aspect, very interesting. And Mandy just suggest, when she checked the chart, there's something interesting she want to share with everyone. So let's start. So how about we start with the Mercury ingress into Libra.
Yeah, me?
Yeah.
Shall I?
Yeah.
Unless Milton might have something to say. No, Milton doesn't. So Mercury in Libra, obviously we know Mercury is the planet of communication and our mindset. And Libra asks really for harmonious communication. It's about tact and diplomacy. When it's basically, but as a lot as well. It's I don't know why I'm talking gobbledygook this evening. I do. Mercury in Libra, it's an air sign, it's a communication sign. I should be like fluent, however I'm talking.
It's about to change, I think.
So it's like tact and diplomacy and balance. And I think Libra, like the air signs, it's like the other air signs, it's about maintaining the perspective and considering all points of view and coming to a clear conclusion. So those are sort of, I guess, some things to sort of think about while Mercury is in Libra, thinking about looking at the wider perspective of things, using tact and diplomacy when you're having particularly difficult conversations, bearing in mind to keep the balance and the harmonious balance. Keep things fair, I would say, in Mercury Libra. Tendency to use charming words to please others, but try to keep it real. And often I think when Mercury's in Libra and people that have got Mercury in Libra in their charts, there's that need for positive feedback and seeking validation and appreciation, which also can lead to sort of trying to be charming and perhaps not considering all the options, not balancing out the options, sort of trying to please.
A little juggle a bit, right? Trying to and add a little bit, and try to do the plus and minus. And with a lot of consideration, I think as an air sign, Mercury in the air sign is constantly thinking. This mindset of thinking is a little bit different from I think if Marcus is here, he will say the sign worry quite a lot is earth sign because they are more melancholy. But I think that is kind of a worrying or planning thingy. But for air sign, it would be more like intellectual debate, or maybe or trying to logic things, trying to make things more logically, and that is quite interesting. Another things I'm quite interesting because every time when we talk about Libras, this sign, most people will think about harmony and well balanced or pretty. Some people will because associate Libra with Venus. But there is another aspect because it's pretty interesting. Is that in the Babylonian time, and they find that the Libra in the in the North Hemisphere's autumn equinox is just because is when the sun projects direct onto the equator, and so the day and night is equal. But another symbol about this balance is about it's about trading. So that was their trading season. Because it's after the Virgo season, the harvest, and then they go trading. So it's about business like when Mercury moves into the Libra, somehow it's kind of a trading. But I like the idea you bring in is about fairness. Because I think when you trading, when you negotiation, when you run the business with people, I think more you fair with people are more happy to go to work with you.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants a fair deal, don't they? Everyone in any kind of negotiation, I think negotiation is a good sort of word for Mercury and Libra. Everyone wants a fair deal. It's just a matter of understanding that a fair deal for one person or one side can mean something very different to the other person on the other side, or the other group on the other side, which is where that tact diplomacy. And I think the world needs quite a bit of diplomacy. I think there's been a few diplomacy nightmares in the world over the last week or so, if we've been following current events.
Yeah, I think I think it's quite interesting because when we think about well, last week I was chatting with Marcus, we're talking about the Mercury in Virgo, and that is kind of, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and we talk he say in the traditional view, Mercury in Virgo is pretty powerful place, because not only is the sign rule, it's also a exaltation place. So it's kind of a quite powerful and have a lot of resource to use and try to make most on the Virgo. But when it comes to the Libra, maybe it would be a little bit more, relaxed, a tiny bit, I think, just a little bit, not in that kind of, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to make everything. But when it moves into Libra, maybe it's a little bit time to chill and socializing. Yeah.
Nicer. It's kind of nicer, I guess. It's
and I think
niceness.
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 Niceness. Because I think there's another thing to think about. We don't need to say are they ruling or something, but they do share the similar quality, air sign and the Mercury. There's both focus on communication. So doesn't matter Mercury really own a rulership in modern view, because we both more modern astrologer. So in the modern view, they don't really take any rulership in Libra, but they do share the similar things like we like to communicate it, and we like education. So I think that is the similar things I think should be more easy and comfortable. And maybe we're talking about what happened around here. So I think that for coming next couple week, education will become an important theme.
Well, education for women has become a very big topic in the news already, and we're going to hear a lot more about that in terms of the women and the young women, and every woman really and particularly young women who are in education. Whether that's going to continue now there's been a regime change in Afghanistan. The liberal government to now the Taliban have taken over, so that's going to be a big thing. Interestingly, just on the news today, I watched the news this evening before we started here, and they were talking about, because also it's artistic and aesthetic, for example, it's about the arts in general, Libra, and it's Libra is ruled by Venus, as we associate traditionally with the feminine. And they were talking about an all-woman Shakespeare company, an all-black woman Shakespeare company.
That's interesting.
So all the male parts were played by all female parts and male parts played by women in this doing Shakespeare completely differently. And when you think about how Shakespeare was done in Shakespeare's time, women weren't on stage, and it would be men the female parts would be men dressed up as women playing the female part. So that's kind of turned it on its head, but it's also sort of giving sort of more chances to sort of appear in Shakespeare for Black and Asian and mixed race women, which I think is fascinating.
It's so fun, it's so interesting. That is kind of I think another things when we're talking about the Mercury in Libra, I think what is suggests that if you want to achieve something, maybe you rather be request politely, or try to focus on fairness, or to to mention your point, to validate your point, rather than I particular myself. When I get upset, I'm very easy to just talk about a lot of things very fast, and sometimes being a slightly more agitated. I don't want to use the word emotional, but it's quite interesting, when you go to the Mercury moving into Libra, somehow you have to kind of slowly to bring you a point and slowly to suggest what can we do, you know. That is kind of a very different approach between the, oh, I thought I lost you.
I know, great communication there. We completely just froze. You
Oh
froze on
God,
the
I
screen.
have to check the chat now. What happened now?
but no, you're right about being polite and, you know, in charming and considerate and good manners. I think there's something quite refined about the Libra at its best, isn't there? It's refined.
Yes, I like the word refine. I think I lost you again, but anyway, so that is pretty interesting because it's about like a social skill. It's about a diplomat, and it's about how to you choose your word nicely, and how to also we have to care about each other. It's not only thinking about what I want and what I want to say. It's also thinking about how the other people, and this is very interesting, the different part between the Western people and Eastern, because like I'm from the Asian background, and we've been told since our childhood, we've been told about you should think about others. Like I don't know about other country, but in my education, when I was growing up, it's kind of we have to think for the other people, and this is very interesting. So when I grow up, I come to Europe, people say you have to think about yourself, or you have to make your point, which is like, oh, I'm not used to that. I think at this point I already lost Monday, so I have to carry on. I think Monday will log in very soon. But this is very interesting because today we're talking about the Mercury in Libra, and then you know Libra is the partnership, and suddenly first time in our podcast I lost my my guest, but it's okay, it's okay. So I think today we're talking about the Mercury in Libra. So for next month, for this month, for coming months, if you want to achieve something, if you want to, you know, communication, remember a few things: being polite and you know, go with like a very make your point and politely to request, and that is kind of to help you to deliver your message. Okay, I think Monday we have enough Mercury in Libra.
Yeah, you just lost me there as well. I went offline again. I think the gremlins have struck.
And you know, that's interesting because since we start this podcast, this is the first time I lost guests, and we are talking about Mercury in Libra.
I know.
That is quite funny because I have like, oh, without guests, how long I'm going to host?
Because Libra is about partnership as well. It's not a solo activity with Libra.
It is. I was like, oh my God. Okay, let's go to the difficult one then. The challenge aspect.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, it's not only the Mercury changing sign, and we have a kind of a challenge aspect is going to happen is Mars Saturn sesquiquadrate, right? So I mean minus aspect is always interesting because I mean for major aspect or people think about good or bad. Anyway, I tend not to thinking aspect is good or bad, but especially when it comes to the minus aspect, somehow I think for beginner, especially for beginner, if our audience start to study astrology, it's a little bit challenge for them to make an interpretation. Especially, let's focus on sesquiquadrate. What is sesquiquadrate and how we understand it?
Yeah, the sesquiquadrate, it's even a mouthful, isn't it, to say sesquiquadrate?
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking in some places, perhaps America, it's the sesquare? I might be wrong there, but we call it the sesquiquadrate.
Yes.
And it basically, it's, if you think about a square aspect, as we know, a square aspect is very challenging and it's a strong aspect. Well, a sesquiquadrate is also a very challenging aspect as well. It tends to manifest in slightly different ways to the square. So if you've got a very strong, tight square in your chart, that will kind of show up in your personality, in your life, in your sort of the unfolding of your life, and you can kind of track the squares, how it development, how you kind of get used to it, how you use it, how it uses you, you know, that kind of thing. You know, squares will kind of, particularly a T-square aspect pattern, will kind of like almost tell the story of your life, kind of thing. Whereas a sesquiquadrate is, you know, is also a strong aspect, is called a minor aspect. It's a strong aspect, but it tends to manifest slightly different to a square in that it will manifest perhaps in a narrow area of your life, potentially. You know, for example, if you've got an outer planet in a sesquiquadrate to the moon, for example, that will have sort of interesting things to say potentially about the mother relationship or the nurturing relationship and the needs in a more narrow way than it would be if it was the square. It's also I think an aspect where it can describe sort of unconscious patterns, you know, sort of behavioral patterns and psychologies that have been repressed, that operate unconsciously. It's that idea of someone who perhaps might, and this might be relevant potentially for Mars sesquiquadrate Saturn, somebody who's in control, who suppresses their anger, and then when that perhaps is triggered, it can kind of, the anger can kind of blow up, it can kind of show itself as if from nowhere, but there's unconscious sort of patterns going on underneath the surface all the time through sort of whether you know denial, projection, suppression or whatever, and then that kind of anger can kind of burst out. Potentially that person who's been anger, or if it projected, you know, you might feel that anger coming back at you. So that's kind of, I guess, the basic sort of dynamic of a sesquiquadrate. Very interesting to look at in your chart, and also they do become quite powerful, I think, in mundane charts.
I think so, especially if we consider aspect. Let's say, like you say, even you say minus aspect, but when we consider it's like when it comes to tight orb, it's not minus aspect, so it's not powerful. Well, no. It's minus aspect, but so we only use tight orb like within 1 degree or 2. In the natal chart, I use 2 degrees, but in transit, I probably use 1 degree. And that's pretty powerful because when it goes to that tight, when it goes tight, it's kind of things right up in your face. You couldn't deny it. You couldn't like escape from it. So you have to deal with it. And another idea, my view of a sesquiquadrate is like, I like you say something like going underneath and until something triggered, it go to, you know, bomb, explode or erupt. It's also like I mean, like something you like a material or something is very fragile and you suddenly crash it. You know, it's very easy to break to broken. Then that is more like a sesquiquadrate. You know, really difficult to say it. And I have to tell you every time because you know, when I write an article and you know, English is not my mother tongue, but most of the aspect I can spell very easily. Try, square, you can spell it. Even conjunction is easy. But
even quincunx.
Yeah, quincunx is so easy for me. I don't know why. But the sesquiquadrate, tell you,
I'm with you.
200 and 100 times, I will need to check it up. Have I missed a D or T or R, or is that R before A before R?
My only language, English, and I struggle with spelling that one. And it doesn't come on a spell check either, does it?
So yes, and I like it. What do you say? You know, even for its name, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
This is an uneasy aspect, and I'd like to talk about it later a little bit more, but let's focus on this because it's Mars and Saturn. So what kind of event or what kind of situation we can expect?
Yeah, I think tests of courage, tests of courage and tests of strength. It's hard work. Mars Saturn is a hard work. It requires courage. It requires stamina. And any sort of aspect between those two planets talks about courage and stamina. I think there's something around control and lack of control. And I think we might be looking at a chart that sort of shows that sort of loss of control. We talked about anger, but you know, in a mundane aspect, we might be looking at predicting outbursts of violence. The military is in focus, and as we know in the world at the moment, the military is very much in focus. So violent outbursts. Sport and martial arts, of course. We've got the Paralympics at the moment.
Yes.
On. And also authority figures, perhaps strong father figures, and disputes and separations. And I think with Mars being in Virgo, you know, that's the idea of Mars in Virgo is about security and control, I think. And then you've got Saturn in Saturn is strong. Remember, Saturn is in Aquarius, and it's strongest in its own sign. So that authority that comes with Saturn is a strong influence.
You mentioned about a recent chart that I think we all understand. We are talking about the Afghan situation. So how about I just show the chart? We go through that because it's also fit into like sesquiquadrate. And when you think about the whole situation, don't forget. I remember one keyword. If correct me if I'm wrong. A keyword with sesquiquadrate is kind of frustrated. And I think currently whole Western world, UK or US, we are pretty frustrated about, you know, the situation happening there. And most people just say, look, what have we done for 20 years? And that is kind of frustrating. And that is Mars, Saturn, you know, you try very hard, but you fail. So, and the Monday, you just mentioned about you use the 2001, 22nd December's chart.
Yeah, this chart is 22nd December 2001, as you said, Rod, and it's set for Kabul in Afghanistan, and it's at 12 minutes past 1 p.m. local time. And this is actually the chart for the swearing in of the post-Taliban government. So the government that has just broken down, and I know the president, or whatever they're calling the CEO, president, prime minister, obviously fled the country just as Kabul fell. So, which is interesting because now this new regime, this what was then in 2001, the new regime in Afghanistan has now fallen.
Yes.
And if you look at that chart, if you look at the top of the chart in the 10th house there on the inner wheel, you'll see Neptune.
Yeah.
And then you'll see, if you look up, you'll see Saturn. So transiting Saturn, Saturn has been transiting, and it's going to be quite a long transit because it's going backwards, retrograde. So it's a long transit. So Saturn, Neptune. So we talked about Saturn as being authority figures. We talked about the idea of sort of, you know, strong figures and that strength and that courage and those tests. Then you've got Neptune in the 10th house in the birth chart for this chart we're using for Afghanistan, which is a very fine chart, by the way. Now, the 10th house in a mundane chart is about the government.
Yes.
Neptune tends to dissolve things. So you get Saturn, you get a strong force coming onto that Neptune, and what happens is that the government dissolves when Saturn, you know, when Saturn comes onto that Neptune, that government has dissolved. So I think that's really quite graphic, actually. And the sesquiquadrate that we're talking about, this is a chart for now we're looking at, 27th of August. Sorry, it's chart for today. Is that right? Yes. We're looking at the chart for today, around the outside of the Afghanistan chart. And you'll see Mars there in the success.
Shall I move into the 15th on the day when they, you know?
Yeah, let's have a look at that.
This is the chart on the day when the Taliban walk into the presidential palace. I think is, according to the news I get, is 22:35. I mean, this is when news released. And you can see even the MC.
That's really interesting. I'm looking at this chart for the first time. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? There's a lot. There's a lot. Well, I'd probably need to study this chart to sort of draw things out.
Yes.
It's interesting that you've got in the first house, in transits, you've got Uranus in Taurus in the first house.
Yes.
The first house is obviously about, you know, how the it's about the people, isn't it?
Yes, it's about people, it's about country itself, and it's about old change. It's a little bit like old change,
Yeah,
And
of
so,
shock, and
shock, I
it's
think so.
fast and it's shocking, and it's
Yes.
kind of pulled the rug out from. I mean, it's a state of horror, really, isn't it? What's happening?
Yes, yes. I think that day is a kind of shocking because they never. I think that no one would think they can move so fast. And everyone was like, oh, it would be a smooth transition or something, I think. Well, and the things is unexpected, move so fast, and they started whoosh, move into Kabul. I think tomorrow, 7 o'clock, me and Alejo and Fernanda, we're going to talk about same thing. We will walk around the Afghan. So Mandy, if you have time, let's come to chat a little bit more about this. But what we focus is, Mandy, you mentioned about this the from next week, the Saturn Mars Saturn sesquiquadrate will still trigger unless
because
things.
I looked at the 31st of August is the date that was given for all the foreign troops, etc., to depart Afghanistan. And that was obviously the date that was set. I think that date was set and agreed with the Taliban and with the Americans, with Joe Biden, the American president.
Yes, here.
And by the 31st of August, that sesquiquadrate between Mars and Saturn becomes into a 2-degree.
Yes, it's pretty tight.
So it starts to be felt.
Yeah.
So, which doesn't sound. It looks like they're going to be. They're already wrapping up getting out civilians, and then I guess by the 31st they'll got out all their military as well. It doesn't look great, does it? Because
no, it's not very comfortable. You can see with this chart, the Mars is also going to opposite the Moon, and the MC by the midnight. I think the modern time working on when you say 31st, it's midnight of 31st. Then look, MC is right on Mars. So that would something very tricky. I think is a little bit worrying. I think already yesterday they already Islamic State caused some problem around the airport. So yes, I
think it was a suicide bomb, and it apparently killed about 90 people, including some Americans, and they've just and they've also said that now a couple of British citizens have been killed in that as well. It's just horrific, to be honest with you. I don't have words. It's awful.
Yeah, it is. I was exchanging my idea with Fernanda this afternoon. She said, I don't know what to she said that I don't know what to talk. It's all look very dark.
It is.
I know that is the feeling about when Mars Saturn getting approached, and you not only feel like it, you probably feel a little bit frustrated, and maybe there's anger there, but you try to suppress it. That's a Mars Saturn things. So be aware about this Mars Saturn sesquiquadrate, and would you suggest something to something to avoid the you know what I mean? When you have this kind of frustration.
When we look at that chart here, don't forget this Mars Saturn sesquiquadrate is happening everywhere in the world, and it's not just we're just looking at one particular chart. And it's not, anyone who's a beginner, we don't want to frighten anyone, think that terrible things are going to happen to everyone.
No, it's not like
the
that.
Case. Just to sort of clarify that. But what I said before about, it's about courage and strength.
Okay.
It's about, using your body, for example, do something physical, do some kind of sport, because Mars is in Virgo, of course.
Yes.
The idea really that Mars in Virgo likes to be in control, and Saturn is all about control. So think about any control issues. Try not to sort of get too controlling. I'm not saying it's not an aspect that invites you to just kind of chill out and go with the flow. But be aware that you can't control everything. Control the things that you can't, and try and let the other, the things you can't control go, because there is that kind of like, everything gets really, really tense, like you said, Rod, before everything gets really tense, and you suddenly it's like outbursts, and you're like, oh, I can't control this any longer, you know. Just kind of try and kind of let things go. If you can't control something, try and let it go. Obviously, we don't want anyone to, you know, have to put up with violence or abuse or anything like that. So we don't wish that on anyone, and we hope everyone has a really peaceful time. Remember, Mercury in Libra, when on the 31st, when it goes into that 2-degree orb, the Mercury, the Mars Saturn, when it's just coming in, and obviously it's lasts for about a week, I would say, Rod.
Yeah,
agree, about a week.
Yeah.
Remember, on the day when it starts to sort of come into influence, that's when Mercury also goes into Libra. So we've got that idea of using tact and diplomacy and balance and fairness and kind words and kindness and, you know, and politeness. So I guess that would be my.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, talk about my personal experience. To be honest, if when I deal with my family, and usually, you know, when we deal with family, it's usually different. So when I deal with family, usually I'm quite kind of a very, very emotional, very urgent about something. I want this now, I want this that. And sometimes I will get quite frustrated. Then I will shouting a little bit louder. And they will say, why are you doing this? Why are you shouting? Could you just, you know, say it politely? And I think, what? But I know, and I learned a little bit, because I know I would never do that to you. I would never do that to my friend or to my colleague. I would never do that. But why to my family? So I said, okay, when next time when I deal with my family, talk to my mom or my sister, I will like go to that kind of a mode, you know, okay, how about this and that? And then things go pretty bad, much better, rather than I'm like angry and frustrated. So, you know, I think
you have to. I think when one is with one's family, one has to remember that they're a grown, mature adult now, and not like that frustrated 9-year-old that can't get their own way. And I think parents also need to remember that their children are grown adults, and they can, you know, and you know, and that's interesting actually, because I guess sometimes parents, when their children are young, have total control over their parents' lives, and I think sometimes it's difficult for parents to let go of that. So that's maybe another thing to think about, you know. Yeah,
I think so, because there's a Mars Saturn, you know, that is a little bit with authority figure things. And
father figure,
father figure, and how you express yourself, no matter you angry or not, how you protect yourself, how you defend yourself, or how you stand for yourself. That's also the issue with that Mars Saturn there. It's very interesting. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Mandy. I mean, even, you know, we just talk about all these things, only two subjects, and we can just like, wow.
Yeah, the time's up, isn't it?
Yes.
What about tomorrow's talk with Wendy Stacey?
Yes, tomorrow. Yes. Okay, we still have a few space. Please contact us. Wendy Stacey tomorrow. You know what happened? That's just a joke between us. On that day, last 2 weeks ago, Wendy gave another talk, and then I keep calling her Monday. I keep apologize. I don't know why.
Bless. Do you know what? I get called Wendy often, actually. I don't know. People call me when not in relation to our Wendy, astrology Wendy, but just generally in my life, people get confused by the names, because I guess they're quite similar, aren't they?
Yeah. So tomorrow, Wendy going to talk about the social climate. So it's a little bit more about the smaller outer planet cycle, like a Saturn, like a Jupiter, all about them. I think 2 weeks ago, she gave a very, very good everlasting landscape. That was a fantastic talk. And then if you're interested, please contact us, you know, send us an email. I will send the email there, and then send us email. We will have like we will send you the tell you how to join us. And also 7 o'clock, from 7 o'clock is our World Cup Mundane Astrology Discussion Group. And there will be me and Alejo and Fernanda. We will also mainly focus on Afghanistan to talk about situation there, but everyone are welcome. The only thing you need to do is come to our school website to register for the email, and then we will send you the link. Okay, so that's from tomorrow 7 p.m. Saturday 7 p.m. Okay, so thank you, Mandy. Thank you, everyone. Looking forward to see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye.